This video is for the Inequalities and Absolute Values module, and in this video we'll be looking at Ieab Gh and H. In this section we're looking at absolute values. Now essentially the absolute value of a number can be thought of as the distance of that number from zero on the number line. So we're looking at magnitude or size only. Distance is not a signed quantity, so it's always considered positive. Absolute value can be considered to answer the question how far, not in which direction. The absolute value of a number n is written as n between two parallel lines. The absolute value of a positive number is a number itself, and the absolute value of a negative number is its opposite, or the positive number. So the absolute value of positive x is x, and the absolute value of negative x is x. So for example, if I have the absolute value of 3, I look at 3 on the number line, which is here, and that's a distance of 3 units from 0. So that is why my answer is 3. If I'm looking at the absolute value of negative 5, where is negative 5 on the number line? It's there, and it's 5 units from 0. Yes, it is in that to the left of 0, but that doesn't matter. We just want to know how far it is from 0. And then the absolute value of 0 is 0 because you haven't gone anywhere. The definition of absolute value can be used to simplify numerical expressions and to compare values. So for example, to simplify the following expressions, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2, and the absolute value of, plus 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. Here, 4 minus 9 is negative 5, so we have the absolute value of negative 5, which is 5. In this one, the absolute value of 4 is 4. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. 4 plus 9 is 13. Now for which is greater, the absolute value of negative 5 or the absolute value of negative 3? Well, the absolute value of negative 5 is just 5. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. And since 5 is greater than 3, we can say that the absolute value of negative 5 is greater than the absolute value of negative 3. Now we can also solve absolute value equations. When solving equations involving absolute value, it's important to consider that both the absolute value of a positive number n and the absolute value of its negative number, negative n, are both equal to the positive value of n. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I have the absolute value of x equals n, x could be equal to n, or negative x could be equal to n. So basically that x could be positive or negative. Hence, to solve equations with absolute values, both solutions must be considered. The solution will involve solving two equations using the above definition of absolute value. The steps for solving absolute value equations are therefore 1. Isolate the absolute value, and again on one side of the equation, whether it be left or right. Write two equations using the definition of an absolute value. Solve each linear equation and then check the solutions. So my first one here, I have the absolute value of x plus 6 equals 8. So from my two possibilities here is that the positive x plus 6 equals 8, or the negative of x plus 6 equals 8. Okay, so solving this side, x plus 6 equals 8, so I take 6 from both sides, so x is 2. Okay, from this side I can take that negative over to the other side, or I can just expand out the bracket. So I can just go negative x, take 6. So negative, there's a 1 here, negative 1 times x, negative 1 times 6. And that equals 8. I'm just going to write that in blue. So negative x take 6 equals 8. Get rid of that take 6 by adding 6 to both sides. So now I have negative x equals 8 plus 6 is 14. So that means that x must be equal to negative 14. And again, you can check your solutions. Check. We started with x plus 6 equals 8. If x equals 2, my left hand side is the absolute value of 2 plus 6, which is the absolute value of 8, which is 8, which is my right hand side. So that's right. If x is negative 14, I have the absolute value of negative 14 plus 6, which is the absolute value of negative 8, which is 8, which is my right hand side. So that's correct. So I know my solution's correct. Now let's look at this one. Now the first thing is we need to isolate the whole absolute value. So that means we need to get rid of this plus 3. So we're going to take 3 from both sides. So now I have 2 absolute value 4x minus 5 equals 15 minus 3 is 12. Now the whole absolute value is being multiplied by 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I have 4x minus 5 equals 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now I've isolated the absolute value, I can go into my two possible solutions. 4x minus 5 equals 6, or the negative of 4x minus 5 equals 6. Okay, isolating the x on this side, add 5 to both sides. So we have 4x equals 11. Divide both sides by 4, and I have x is 11 over 4. Okay, on the other side, negative times 4x, negative times negative 5 is plus 5. Change my colour. So negative 4x plus 5 equals 6. Isolating the x, need to get rid of that plus 5, so I'm going to take 5 from both sides. So I have negative 4x equals 1. Divide both sides by negative 4. So x is negative 1/4. Okay, and again, you can check your solutions, and that is outlined in the textbook if you want to have a look. What now? Well, you need to do some practice. So complete exercises Ieab G1 and H1. So you need to look at both of those exercises. If you have any problems, please ask for help.